welcome to How She Owns It, a podcast dedicated to female entrepreneurs and boss moms who left their 9 to 5 to own their time, their finances, and their joy in life by building their own businesses. In this episode, I have the first career strategist, Julia Toothacre. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Julia, tell our listeners your background and your business so far.
So I'm a career strategist. I have been doing this work within higher education for about 10 years or so. And a couple of years ago, I decided to quit my job and start this business, partially because I had some really big life things that happened to me that changed my perspective on what I wanted out of life. And so my dad passed away in fall of 2016. I had my son in fall of 2017, and my mom passed away in January of 2018.
My goodness.
So I had 3 massive life events. I'm also an only child, so my support system looks a little bit different than people who have multiple siblings or lots and lots of family. I didn't have that. And so I just was in a different place in my life, and I'm extremely risk averse. So starting my own business was not something that I ever thought that I wanted to do until all of those things happened. And I realized that I wanted something different. I wanted to spend time with my family. I wanted to own my schedule. I wanted to own my time. And I wanted to work in my zone of genius more often than what I was doing in my corporate position. And so I decided to leave and start this business, and it has been an absolute wild ride. And I've gone through so many iterations of what I wanted this business to be. And I think I'm finally figuring out where we're landing now, but it's been really fun and exciting. So I wanted to come and share a little bit of my story for people who might be in a similar situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just recently left my corporate job, literally in the middle of the pandemic. I'm also very risk averse, and I'm only a few months in full-time business owner mode, but it is extremely scary. And it's one of those things where people are like, you have to live it and experience it to really know what it is. You know, You can read as many books, you can do an MBA, but at the end of the day, unless you just go full in, you know, kind of naively in my case. So let's talk about your and I'm really sorry to hear that. It sounds like you had to deal and roll with the punches quite a lot in that, especially with your new child. And, you know, I've had a lot of guests come into the show who are boss moms, who are, you know, I think it's almost like something big has to happen and to rock it to your core to actually feel the fear and do it anyway, kind of thing. So for me, Absolutely. it was kind of like a very toxic work environment. And then the whole pandemic happened, and I was like, let me just do my thing, like for my own peace of mind. And then for you, it was kind of like, I wanna own my time so I can spend more time with my family. So a lot of people can probably resonate with that, especially right now where there's a lot of job insecurity. So how are you finding your business in terms of, you know, being a career strategist, and you must be somehow, I guess, booming right now?
So what's interesting is my business has gone through a lot of iterations of what I wanted it to be. And when I first started, I actually did not want clients because I was so burnt out from meeting with people that I just did not want to deal with clients. And I wanted to start a podcast. And I said, I've got all this knowledge and I wanted to put a podcast out there. And that was my goal when I started my business. And I was like, if something else comes from that, great. And put it out there. And then through that journey, I was like, you know, I have a lot of content that I want to put out too, because I built so much content in my time in higher ed that I was like, I might as well just give this stuff away and put it out there and everything. So I built all kinds of freebies and content, whatever, digital products, basically. Mm-hmm. And then I got to a point where I had people reaching out to me saying, I need help, like people who I've known for years, friends, former students, all that. And I started coaching again and was like, oh, oh, I do like coaching. Yeah, I do want to work with people. Like, and so when I started my business, it was never about making money. So that was never my focus, which I know sounds really backwards because that's normally why people are like, I want to replace my 9 to 5 and all of that. We have a different income situation. We have multiple streams of income. So that's why this business was not as risky for me to do. And I could do the podcast and all of that. Then I got to a point where I was like, no, I want this to be a legitimate business because I'm good at this. And I want people to have access to this content and this information. And I wanted to get it out there. And my focus completely shifted in what I wanted out of it. And so then, and this actually just happens like a few months ago, where I decided that I wanted to create a full-blown coaching program for full-time professionals who are like, well, what the heck am I doing with my life? What is going on? You know, so like you were talking about, the people who in the pandemic are like, I don't know what's going on in my career. Things are so up in the air. Things are so uncertain. What do I do? Where do I go? Am I secure in my job? So people that have all those questions, I wanted to build a program for them based on all my experience. So that's actually launching in January. And so I'm in the middle of building all of that out right now. And so that's why I'm in this really weird place with my business where it's still very, very young. Yeah, very young.
So exciting. It's super exciting. And right. You might not know this about me, but this is my second podcast. So when
no way.
Yeah, I have two. I mean, the first one I've kind of ended the season, but my first podcast was called Find Your Career Calling.
Yes.
And I started it.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I started it when I was still in college and university for me, because I'm based in the UK. And I was thinking of doing career coaching before I started my own agency. And, you know, it's a really rewarding job, like helping people and, you know, figure out, because I think a lot of people just don't know what the heck to do with their life, you know? And yep. I think especially if you're fresh out of college, or people, like the quarter life crisis is so real. Like I was on a phone call with someone, and I did an internship at a bank when I was still at college, and I shadowed her, and she's only like a few years older than me. And I had a call with her because she came to me because she had a business idea. And I don't want to go too much into details, but she said, I actually don't want to be in finance. I just decided to go because the bank was going to sponsor me for my visa. And I was just like,
that happens a lot for international students. Yeah. I used to work with international students back in the day, and
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but that's what happens to a lot of them. Yeah.
And I just said, oh my goodness, like I can't even fathom having to stay in a job I hate, you know, just to stay in the country that I love. And I was like, right. Oh my goodness, I am so blessed. So if you can give some tips to our listeners who might be, you know, side hustlers at the moment and wanting to go full time to their business, but are really scared kind of thing. And I get it, right? People have to pay the bills. And there will always be that kind of transitional period where you seem to be working like 70 hours a week or more just to keep afloat and keep two things going at the same time kind of thing. What would be your advice in terms of managing, you know, time and responsibilities and not really burning out?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, and I want to make sure people understand this too. I think right now there's a culture of have a side hustle, start a business, do all these extra things, which I think is wonderful. I think if you can balance both, go for it. But one thing I do want to say is if you start down this path and realize that it is not for you, for whatever reason, it's okay to go back. It's okay to go back to corporate. And I feel like people don't send that message enough.
Yes.
It's very like, you have to own your own business. That's the only way you'll have freedom. That's the only way, Well, that comes with a lot of risk, and it comes with a lot of other pieces that people don't talk about unless you are in community with other business owners who are living this life and you understand. So for example, we have to pay for our own health insurance. It's very expensive to pay for health insurance. when you're not part of a corporation, right? And so little things like that you don't really think about become a different kind of burden when you're running your own business and you're relying on that income. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there for people who start down this path and go, I just don't feel good about it, or it's not happening the way I want it to. I don't want to put in this time anymore. That's okay. Go back to corporate, be secure, just have a plan there when you go back. So I think that's one distinction that I want to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
In terms of time management and what you're looking at, I think one thing that I would think about is, when do you have the most energy throughout the day? And that was one thing that I had to figure out for myself, is what part of the day did I want to do what tasks? Now, if you're working full-time and you're trying to side hustle, that becomes a little bit harder to manage depending on what your work schedule looks like. But also looking at how much energy is your job expending from you. So do you have the energy at the end of the day to come home and put it toward your business, or do you have to wait until the weekend? And so for me, it's figuring out what is going to work best for you and doing that. So don't look at somebody else who's hustling 20 hours a day and go, I have to do it that way. No, you have to do it in a way that works for you and that's going to help you succeed. Because if you come home and you're up until midnight and you have to get up at 5, that might not be a good schedule for you to try to balance both. And so it's having a lot of self-awareness around what your body is telling you, what your highs and lows are during the day, and all of that, so that you can show up for each thing well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a great point. And that's one of the things that whenever I get periods of self-doubt, and I speak about it to my interns, to my associates, that look, just do your best, do this whole new venture thing. You can always go back to corporate. I always tell them, like, you can always go back to full-time employment. You can always do this. Because I feel like a lot of people get decision fatigue, or they almost use that threat or that fear of, I'm going to become unemployed and homeless and whatever. And then they just go spiral. And I totally get it, that anxiety. And it's like, just tell yourself you can always go back to employment. It's fine.
Yeah,
even in the
absolutely.
pandemic, there's a lot of jobs online. There's remote jobs. I'm so excited about how companies are definitely embracing remote working. I've been banging on about remote work for so long, and I'm so happy that this pandemic has kind of forced companies to realize that you don't gotta be in an office, in a desk, in a cubicle to be productive at your job. So I'm so excited for that. So when clients come to you, or when what are the most common kind of issues, common kind of mistakes and things that you spot, like patterns you spot about people in their careers?
Yeah, it's usually just not planning, honestly. It's so simple. It's just a lack of planning. I think what ends up happening is people get into a career path for whatever reason, whether it's I need a visa, or I had a mentor, or my parents wanted me to do this, or the money was good here, whatever the reason is, they get on this path and realize in like 7 to 10 years that they hate it. And they haven't figured out why, because they've just been going through the motions. They've just been going day to day and not really thinking about, how is this impacting me? Where is this going to take me? What do I want from life? Where do I want to go? What do I enjoy? And I think when people really dig in and do that level of work on themselves, then that decision fatigue is much easier to manage in your career and in your business, because you're so much more focused on, this is where I'm headed and this is where I want to go, and here are the steps that are going to take me there. So it's honestly just a plan. People just need to have some type of goal or plan to reach for, so that they can fill out the steps to get there.
So what would you normally advise to our clients? Because I'm all about practical advice. If they are trying to find out, what to do next. Because I think a lot of people, and I do this a lot with when I was doing the Find Your Career Coding podcast, and a lot of people would listen to it, and most of them were university students or peers of mine at the time, and they'll be like, oh, I listened to your podcast, it was really good, this and this and this. And I went to a very kind of elite university, which kind of was a machine for just investment bankers and lawyers, right? And I think it's almost like we're socialized in this university to go down a specific route. And if you don't end up working for PwC or whatever, you have not been successful. Right. And it's very hard to get out of that mindset. And not everyone is aware that they're kind of, you know, socialized into that way. So what would be the steps to do what you just said, to kind of start planning?
So one of the first things that I always recommend, especially people in that situation where they've just been they're just riding this train that they just jumped on because that's what everybody else was doing where they were. I would actually recommend taking some different personality assessments, because a lot of times what happens is people just like lose who they are, or they have a voice in their head of somebody that has described them a certain way, whether it's themselves, a parent, a boss, whoever, and it's not necessarily accurate of who they are. And when you get to a certain point in your life, you realize, why do I hate what I'm doing? Why am I so tired at the end of every day? What is going on? Where is my energy? Where is this? And when you do some personality assessments to start understanding who you are, if you don't have a good starting point, right? Some people are very self-aware, and that is a gift, and that's amazing. But most people, when they're lost, they are so consumed with stress and anxiety. And right now we all have pandemic anxiety. So everybody has that level of stress going on.
Yeah.
That it's hard to sit back and really look at yourself objectively. So when you start with an assessment, it gives you some data points to then look at and go, is this me or is it not me? Why or why not? And then you start to build a more accurate profile of who you are as a person. And then you can start to align and find some other careers that might be a better fit for where you're headed in your life at this point.
Can you recommend any? Because there's a ton.
So there are a ton. And here's my thing with assessments. I have my preferences, and my preferences are based on how I coach and my coaching style. Yeah. And so the ones that I utilize in my coaching are because of me and because of the result that I've seen when all of them are used together. So my top 3 assessments that I use are Gallup Strengths, Enneagram, which is a new one for me, but I really, really like it, and MBTI or Myers-Briggs. And Myers-Briggs gets a lot of heat, but for me, I actually use, Myers-Briggs has 2 assessments, step 1 and step 2. If you've ever done MBTI and you have not done step 2, I highly recommend it. The results in that are insanely good. Like the reports there are so good. So I take my clients through those 3 assessments. There are others. And honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one you take. You have likely taken one at some point in your life or through your job or something like that. Pull that thing back out, look at the results. You know, a lot of it is just preference on how the assessment talks, like the language that they use and all of that. So some people love strengths. Some people love Enneagram, some people love MBTI, some people hate strengths. You know, it's whatever works for you. So there's no magic assessment. It's take whatever information you can get from it and determine if it's true for you.
Yeah, I make my interns take 16 personalities, which is like a variant of, I think, Myers-Briggs, I think. So yeah, that's super helpful. I think because not BuzzFeed listeners.
No.
Not a BuzzFeed quiz. Because I think a lot of people just think those are legit. Those are just
not a BuzzFeed quiz.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, let's get to the nitty-gritty, because I think that there's so many coaches out there. And I want our listeners who are listening to this, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are wanting to change careers, getting a lot of kind of epiphanies at the moment. How do they find a good career coach program? And of course, feel free to plug here. Absolutely fine. But I think it's just great to listen to a career coach give coaching on how to pick a good career coach, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And so here's my other thing. I am not a career coach for everyone. I have a very distinct style. I'm very direct. I'm very straightforward. I'm also very motivating, and I work really closely with my clients. I get to know them very intimately so that I can help them through their career and other parts of their life. And I will call you out. Like, I am not afraid to call you out, to really dig into what's going on. Not everybody wants that. Some people want more of a feelings oriented, like really supportive, really, that's not me. I think there's a place for that. That's not me. So that's the first thing, is figuring out what style of coaching works for you. And you can actually figure this out based on managers or bosses that you have had in your life. So think back to what you liked and what you didn't like about bosses and managers, and kind of compile a list of different traits and qualities. And that's what you're going to want to look for in a career coach. There are different types of career coaches, and depending on what you need at that time is going to depend on who you look for. So for example, I work with like mid-level managers in corporate America who want to stay in corporate America. I do not focus on resume writing, job searching, interviewing. I do not focus on those things. Okay. I focus on life transformation, career transformation. So where are you going? Where are you headed? All of that. Now, depending on what you need, I might help with your resume. I might help with some of those pieces, but that is not what I put out into the world. I am not a resume writer. Can I do it? Absolutely. I did it for years, but that's not the business I'm in now. There are other coaches out there, that is their business. They write resumes, they do interview prep, they do intensive job search with you, and all those things. So if you're in that place in your career, likely an earlier career person, then you're going to want to find someone who does those things, and that's who you're going to want to invest in. You can also look for career coaches who are specific to your industry. So if you're in like finance, for example, and you want to stay in finance, there are a lot of coaches who came out of that. They were professionals in that world, and you can go to them and they will likely have a more intimate understanding and knowledge of where you're at and the different struggles being in that industry. But you can also go to a generalist. I would be a generalist. And that has its benefits as well, because if you're somebody who is exploring, then I'm a really good fit, because it doesn't matter to me what your job is. I'm more looking at you as a person and how do we find a good fit for you. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's really, where are you right now? And what is your most immediate need? And who is going to be a good fit for that?
Amazing. Great. So putting on the business owner hat, this is another question. What has been your journey with, so I help my clients, I'm a digital business manager, so I help clients with digital products. So putting back your business owner hat, I'd love to know, how has been your experience of creating a coaching program?
Yeah. So when I was in higher ed, I created a ton of programs. So creating programs was not my issue. My barrier was actually creating programs in an online space or in a different world, basically. And so my program is a hybrid. It's what I call a flipped classroom. So I have videos and I have different reflection questions and things that my clients will go through first before they meet with me. And what that does is it reduces how many sessions we have to go through to get to the heart of certain issues. Because at this point, my ideal client for this coaching program, they're already motivated. They want to dig into it. And so they are more independent. So they'll do some of that work on their own, so that when they get to me, we're really digging into the things that we need to dig into, and we're not spending time on surface things that they can figure out and work out on their own and move on from. And so in building all of that, even though I've built tons of programs, I've been coaching for 10 years, when I left corporate, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good at this. What, like, who am I?
Imposter syndrome hits.
Oh, it was massive. Absolutely massive. And so I actually ended up hiring a coach specifically to help me develop my coaching program. And I start coaching with him, and he's just like, I feel like you don't need me. Like, you know what you're doing. And so what I needed was confirmation from somebody else who wasn't in my higher ed world, that was a very toxic environment and all of that. I needed external validation from somebody to go, yeah, this is good. Yes, you're doing the right things. Like, you're going to be good. And I'm like, okay. And that's what I needed to feel confident in myself. And it has been one of the best experiences for me, even though honestly, at this point, he's really just a check-in for me. But that's what I needed. I needed somebody to just help me get organized and get rid of all the imposter syndrome and all the negative thoughts that were going through my head as I was building this program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am that coach I have a client right now who is this 40-year-old she calls herself a tech dinosaur, and she's a personal fitness person, and she's so good. Her offline business is so good, and she's trying to take everything online, but she's just like so scattered. And I'm just like, we're going to be fine. Let me hold your hand, and we'll go to the online world together. And you're absolutely right. You know, like, it's such a shame. I think a lot of people get very intimidated with the online world, and it is intimidating because there's no borders.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And there's a lot of different ways to do things. Yeah. And what I realized with the coaching program, because I had followed a couple different people who were doing courses, and I was like, this isn't really a course. But what I got to was, I need to build a program that takes 10 years of experience coaching. And I know what works and what doesn't. I've been doing this for so long. I have a way that I work with clients, former students, and all that. So I took all of that and I built the program that I wanted to build versus somebody else's version of what they think it should be, right? Because they're in some power position in higher ed. And that level of freedom to go, I can literally build whatever I want, and I can take my clients on a journey that I know is going to lead to transformation. That moment for me as a coach and a business owner was it was so impactful, because I'm so excited to get it started and to take people through it, because it's a structured version of what I've been doing as a coach for so many years. So
yes, absolutely. So my last question, and this is my favorite, is that what has been your proudest moment to date so far, as a business owner, or just in life? Sometimes, my mom's raising their kids.
That's a really good question. Okay, this is a little off. I'm going to take the mom route, because this was also a big aha moment for me. So balancing a business, balancing work and a child is one thing. Balancing business and a child is something completely different. Yes. Because they come in whenever they want, and it's just chaos all the time. But what I realized was I had been focusing so much on my business that I wasn't showing up well as a mom. And so then I started to have shame around that. Yes. And what does that mean? Because I left this full-time job to be with my son and to be with my family, and I wasn't showing up the way that I wanted to. And I noticed that my son, he started like acting out a little bit, and I was like, are you bored? Like, what's going on with you? And I realized that as a parent, and this goes for my husband as well, we were holding him back. Right. And so I took my skills, my abilities, I created a curriculum for him at home.
I love that.
He's 3, okay? He's not even going to kindergarten.
That is so adorable.
I created this whole curriculum for him based on where I thought he was and what he needed and all this stuff. And we were like, I don't know, maybe a month or two into it. And he was killing it. Like he was just, I mean, getting and going through everything. And there was a moment where I was like, I can't keep up with you. Like you're moving too fast through this content that I've put together. Like I cannot keep up with you. But the reason that's a proud moment for me is because I had the wherewithal to go, something's not right. And I stepped back from it and went, how can I use my gifts and talents as a person to impact my child as a mom? And that my ability to do that is because of my level of self-awareness and where I know my zone of genius is, where I know my skill set is. I was able to translate that into being a mom. And I'm getting like chills thinking about it, because it went from, I feel shame because I'm not this kind of mom, to, you know what, I'm this kind of mom and this is how I'm going to show up and this is what my son needs. And now he's absolutely killing it to the point that I can't keep up with him now. So that to me was such a proud moment when I was able to get to that place of not feeling shame about who I was as a mom.
I love that. And I hope that he provided a glowing testimonial for your website.
I mean, at 3, I just feature him on social media because he gets the most likes of everybody.
He should be the front page of the landing page for your coaching program.
I am not even kidding you. Like
all
every
ages.
time I post a picture of him, it blows up. Like it's my most commented, most liked post. And I'm like, okay.
I work with a lot. Actually, that's my ideal client, mompreneurs, and the amount of meetings and strategy calls where the secretary is the son or daughter. I have spoken to many 3-year-olds in my time as a business owner. They're super cute. I got a little bit sidetracked and distracted. Brilliant. Thank you so much. So where can people find you? Tell us a bit about the coaching program so that my listeners can, sign up if they feel like it will benefit them.
Yeah, so my website is ridethetidecollective.com. And that is where you can find everything from my podcast to all my content and freebies. I have a ton of freebies on my website because I believe that career education should be available to everyone, regardless of what career you have or status, things like that. And then as far as the coaching program, I actually have not started recruiting for it yet. I'm still in the middle of building it. I'm starting that in a couple of weeks. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can reach out to me either through the website or you can email me at hello@ridethetidecollective.com.
I love the title of your business as well, Ride the Tide.
Oh,
roll with the punches, ride the tide. I love that.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Southern California, so I had to do something with water, and the beach just felt right to me.
Amazing. Well, Julia, thank you so much for being on the show and for giving us your career wisdom.
Thank you for having me.